America spends $954 billion a year on its military. That's not a budget line. That's a third of everything the entire planet spends on defense, combined. More than the next 6 countries put together. About $2,800 from every single American, every year. 38 times NASA. And here's the strange part. Nobody can fully explain where all of it goes. The Pentagon has failed its own audit 8 years in a row. So in the next 10 minutes, we're going to follow the money. Where $954 billion actually goes. What it buys the world. The $8 trillion shadow it leaves behind. And the question every American quietly asks, is it worth it? Let's start with the scoreboard. In 2025, the world spent $2.9 trillion on its militaries, the most in recorded history, and one country accounts for a third of it. The United States, $954 billion. Look at the ranking. China is second, officially $336 billion, though adjusted for what money actually buys there, likely over $500. Russia, $190. Then Germany, India, Britain, Ukraine. Stack the next 6 together and they still don't reach America. But here's what most people get wrong. That dominance is shrinking. In 2010, the US was 43% of all military spending on Earth. Today, it's 33%. The rest of the world is catching up fast. Europe's spending jumped 14% in a single year. And measured against the size of its economy, America actually spends modestly, about 3% of its GDP. Ukraine spends 40%, Russia over 7%, Saudi Arabia 6.5%. So the US isn't the most militarized country. It's the richest one, spending a normal share of an enormous economy. That's the paradox. $954 billion is both the largest military budget in human history and a shrinking slice of a rising world. So what does a third of the planet's firepower actually pay for? That's where it gets surprising. When people picture a defense budget, they think of missiles and jets, but most of the money never touches a weapon. The single biggest line isn't hardware, it's operations and maintenance. Over $360 billion a year just to keep everything running. Fuel, spare parts, training, bases. Next, people. Around $195 billion in pay and benefits. The Department of Defense employs roughly 2.9 million people, active troops, reserves, and civilians. It's one of the largest employers on the planet. Then comes the actual equipment. Procurement. About $153 billion for ships, jets, and vehicles. And research and development, $142 billion. That R&D number alone is bigger than almost any other country's entire military budget. And then there's the footprint. Researchers estimate the U.S. operates around 750 bases in about 80 countries, more overseas presence than any nation in history. Keeping that global network running costs tens of billions every year. Put it together and you start to see it. $954 billion doesn't buy an army. It buys a permanent, planet-wide machine, always deployed, always burning fuel, always paying people on every continent. But a machine that big raises an obvious question. What does the world actually get for it? Because the United States argues it's not buying weapons at all. It's buying something much harder to measure. Here's the case for the $954 billion, and it's stronger than you might think. Start with deterrence. Since World War II, there hasn't been a direct war between great powers. Supporters argue that's not luck. It's the shadow of American military power, making the cost of that war unthinkable. Then there's the ocean. Around 80% of global trade travels by sea, and for decades, the U.S. Navy has kept those shipping lanes open for everyone, including its rivals. The phone in your hand, the car you drive, arrived on ships protected by that budget. And then the technology. The money that flows through military research has a habit of escaping into everyday life. The internet grew out of a Pentagon research project called ARPANET. GPS traces back to military satellites. So do jet engines, weather radar, even the microwave. Supporters put it simply, the world runs on infrastructure that American defense spending paid to invent and American power quietly protects. This is the version where $954 billion isn't waste. It's the price of a stable world and everyone rides for free. It's a powerful argument. Governments across the West build their entire security around it. But there's another version of this story, one with failed audits, trillions that can't be traced, and a human cost measured in millions. And it's just as real. Because for all that spending, one fact is hard to explain away. The Pentagon has never passed an audit, not once. 8 years in a row, independent auditors have looked at the books and returned the same verdict. We cannot fully account for this. We're talking about $4.65 trillion in assets that can't be completely tracked. The Department of Defense says it aims to pass by 2028. Then there's the cost of what the money was actually used for. Researchers at Brown University added up the price of the wars after 9/11. The total, around $8 trillion. And the human cost, counting not just combat, but the hunger, disease, and collapse that followed, is estimated at 4.5 million lives. And here's the number that reframes everything. America now pays more in interest on its national debt than it spends on its entire military. Roughly $1 trillion a year, close to $3 billion every single day, just to service what it already owes. So the critics' version is simple. A machine too big to audit, feeding a debt too big to ignore, built by an industry with every incentive to keep it growing. $954 billion for defense, and a country that can't say exactly where it went, fighting wars whose bills are still arriving. Two stories, same budget. So which one is true? Here's the honest answer. Both stories are true at once. The same $954 billion that keeps the sea lanes open and deters World War is also the budget that failed 8 audits and can't trace $4.5 trillion in assets. The same research machine that gave us the internet and GPS also gave us $8 trillion in wars and a debt now growing faster than the army it pays for. It's not a question of whether America has the strongest military on earth. It clearly does. The real question is quieter and harder. What is enough? At what point does buying security start costing you the very things, the roads, the schools, the future, you were trying to protect? That's not a military question anymore. It's a choice. And it's one every American makes, whether they realize it or not, roughly $2,800 at a time. So, worth it or too much? There's no clean answer. But now you've seen where the money really goes. Tell me where you land below. And if you want to see the machine this budget actually built, the 11-carrier Navy, the secret satellite fleet, that story is on your screen right now.